Reflective Podcast.
Here we are for another episode of the Fully Reflective Podcast. I'm Rocco, and I'm joined here by this amazing soul, Brother Rick Brown. And I will let him introduce himself and share a little bit about his amazing story. But first, a shout out to Brother Guy Harriman, because that's how we connected. And if it wasn't for Guy connecting us last summer, right before he transitioned into a whole nother octave of expression, we wouldn't know each other. So thank you, Brother Guy, for connecting us. And Brother Rick, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. I look forward to it.
So there's so much that we could talk about. And I would love to talk about, Western spirituality as opposed to Eastern spirituality. I would love to talk about music and pop culture and politics and generational. There's so much stuff. But specifically, your entrance into this conversation, I think, is such a fascinating vantage point. You were born where, and then how'd you end up in Thailand?
I was born in Florida and went to grade school in Orlando. And then my dad was in the Air Force, so he got moved to South Dakota and New Mexico, and eventually to California. So I was just a military kid, getting dragged along. And then when I was in Riverside, I went to high school, and that's where I got involved in a rock band. And this is in '64, and we were just doing blues and British style of pop. And then when we started hearing the Yardbirds, then we were like, oh, okay, this is the real thing, Yardbirds. And so we became Yardbirds maniacs. As a matter of fact, even years later, the editor of Rolling Stone called us the American Yardbirds in the magazine.
Wow.
We, got sent to England right out of high school by this DJ who later became John Peel, a famous DJ in UK. And we went to England and got a record deal, and it was unbelievable. And all of a sudden I got drafted. But anyway, to get to the point of the question, when I was in America growing up, I was my religious Christian family. Okay, go to church, and there's almost nothing more boring, unless you're really a fervently emotionally understanding what's going on. And so, I always accepted that God exists, but it just wasn't that relevant or that important to a kid. I wanted to go surfing, and here's a rock band, there's the blues and all this stuff, that non-spiritual stuff that just matters, more to kids. And so I never stopped believing in God, but it just was never, because when I went to church, there was never any of this sectarian stuff, if you don't, it was just like, okay, the teachings and this and that, and the guy would preach and they would sing, and another Sunday, the same old thing. So it wasn't really a hardcore, cult. And I didn't really know much about it. And there was no philosophy at all. It was like zero philosophy. And so I just kind of forgot about it. But then when I went to England in '66 with the band, I ended up taking LSD over there and meeting all these guys from the Pretty Things and other people. And it was all about the psychedelic experience. And all of a sudden there was this religious aspect, which was basically Buddhism, because the whole book Psychedelic Experience was based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is just Buddhism. And basically what it tells you is that you're not this body, you're the spirit soul. And that's like the starting point that, made psychedelic have meaning, apart from just lights and fun, and, that you're not this body. Oh my God, that's really a big thing, And so then I became then we were into the psychedelic music and really pushing.
So you're like an 18-year-old, 17-year-old. How old are you when you had this experience?
When I was in London, I was 19, and I got turned on to acid over there by Viv Prince, who used to be the drummer of the Pretty Things. And we were sitting around. We weren't sitting around looking at colors. They were sitting around. They had the book called The Psychedelic Experience by Timothy Leary. That was a translation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It was all based on you take acid and you go to these different realizations. So I go straight from a rock band who has a major record deal with Phillips Fontana Records. We were like the most feted band in 1966. We're the only American rock band. I mean, Hendrix had just come there, but he wasn't even launched yet. So we had a record out, a big record deal, big record company. I mean, it was like there was no question we were going to make it because we were in the all in the media, just wall to wall media were praising us, and all of a sudden I get taken out of that and put into boot camp. I'm like, hey man, where's the enemy? You know, are they showing up on Long Beach? No, they're 10,000 miles away, and we're going to go kill them in their own country. What for? Because they want us to leave. I mean, I'm like, what are you talking about? You know. So anyway, it became crazy, and it was either go to prison or go to the army. So I took choice number 3. I went to the army thinking, okay, if worse comes to worse, I can get out of here. I can escape. But if I go to prison, I can't even escape. And this is all happening to a 19-year-old kid who just was in a band, you know, with a big record deal. And so I went 2 months or whatever it was to boot camp. And when it was over, I escaped. I escaped with the help of a second lieutenant. And I went to Haight-Ashbury, and that's where I came in contact with Prabhupada. And on the second day I got there, I met the devotees and we were chanting. And they told me Prabhupada's coming, and I ended up meeting Prabhupada and getting initiated and telling him that I've, you know, but the main thing with meeting Prabhupada and the devotees was that, you know, I started out as being just kind of a, you know, believing in God. You know, it wasn't because I never saw Christianity as Jesus saying he was God. It was always he was the Son of God and God is the Father. And say, you know, you don't really know who the Father is, but he's the Father and I'm the Son. And okay, yeah, well, but now here's this Krishna, and this is the Father. This is God. This is like he's not even like you know, a philosopher. He is God, you know, and showing all these various aspects of himself. And also, there's Hinduism itself, which says God is, you know, anybody who says God can only be one thing in one time is so ridiculous because God can be a zillion things a zillion times. You can't put any limit on God. If he's God, because even if you look at this cosmos, I mean, we're in the Milky Way, which is so gigantic, and even that's tiny compared to all these other black holes. And so anyway, to think that you know, Jesus came to this world 2,000 years ago. And before that, there was no religion in the world. And since then, there's only that religion. It's just so ridiculously small-minded. It's like ants sitting around, they see a garden hose and they think it's the end of the world. I mean, it's like, it's so ridiculous because we're so insignificant. And so anyway, when I came in contact with Krishna.
So you're now 1920, you're in Haight-Ashbury, you basically escaped, you're not in the draft anymore. This is 1960, what?
67.
1967. So, and this will be fun to kind of, when we talk to my dad, to see where he was and where you were at those different points. Because I know that's when he was starting to have his musical, you know, crescendo moment as away from Amboy Dukes as well. But you're in the West Coast. And so you meet devotees at first. You don't know anything about Prabhupada or yogic background. So what's your, you meet a devotee, they tell you about it. How do you get introduced to that?
They were, you know, actually the very first night we went to Haight-Ashbury, I was staying at a friend's house in Haight-Ashbury. They weren't devotees. They were just people that I knew from being in my band. And they said to me, hey, tomorrow morning, you're going to go to the Hindu chants? And I'm thinking, man, Hindu chant? You mean there's music involved? I'm in a band. I mean, music, let's go, you know? There was, yeah, it's a chant, it's a mantra, it's all musical. I'm like, yeah, of course, come on. Like, it doesn't get better than that. And so I went down there in the morning and there was a bunch of hippies sitting around. A bunch means like 6 or 7 or, you know, and a bunch of other hippies watching them. And they were chanting Hare Krishna, and it wasn't organized in any way. It was just the very funkiest beginner level of the Hare Krishna movement. And Prabhupada wasn't there, and everybody was looking like a hippie, you know. Nobody had shaved head or was dressed like a devotee. It wasn't at all like what it became. But I'm just going along with this mantra. And they're showing me the books. This is Krishna, this is God, this is the Bhagavad Gita, this is 5,000 years ago. So I'm like, oh, this is great, because I already believed in God. And then I already got introduced to philosophy through the psychedelic movement. Now I'm coming face to face with one of God's own, you know, manifestations that appeared historically in the world. I mean, you can go to this day, you can go to the places where these things happen, you know. You can go right to the birthplace of Krishna right now, you know. You know, where the war and the Kurukshetra happened, you can go there. There's a railway station called Kurukshetra. I mean, you know, these things these aren't like And people say, oh, people in the West act like India, it was uninhabited place for 1 billion years, and until a bunch of Westerners went over there and became the Aryans, and they created Hinduism. And it's like, oh, you lunatics. I mean, India goes back thousands and thousands of years. Even the Bhagavad Gita is over 5,000 years ago. They've got astronomical calculations given in the Bhagavad Gita itself. It said this war took place on this astronomical period where there was this planet, and this sign, and this constellation, which is something they can put in a computer today, and they can go back and see exactly when that was. And it was over 5,000 years ago. Kurukshetra, where the battle took place, a huge, big, giant temple in a big area, and millions of pilgrims go there. And so it's not like, like the West is the West. Oh, we have our history, but everything in the East, that's all a bunch of mythology. Yeah.
So you
So
meet a
anyway,
devotee. How do you go from just experiencing some Hare Krishnas at Haight-Ashbury to then going to India and actually meeting Prabhupada?
no, I met Prabhupada in Haight-Ashbury. Here's how it happened. So I started hanging out with the devotees, and they had a little temple on Frederick Street, and I would go there in the morning and do kirtan every day with them and have some breakfast with them. And they were saying, oh, Prabhupada's going on his way back to India. He's going to be passing through here about a month, and he'll know what to do. He'll advise you what to do, because I'm telling these guys, I got no passport, I got no money, I got nothing. I'm a fugitive. I got no family. I got no country. I mean, I don't know what to do. And so and all this, I just wanted to be in a band. I mean, how did it all come to this? And so they're saying, well, Prabhupada will know what to do. So when Prabhupada came about 4 weeks later, Mukunda, one of the devotees named Mukunda, took me out to meet him at Stinson Beach, which is near San Francisco. So he was out there alone, basically, with 2 other people, and he initiated me. And I told him that he said, you should come to, I told him my situation. He said, well, you should come to Brindavan and chant Hare Krishna and join me there, So I said, well, I have no passport, I have no money, I have nothing. I'm a fugitive. And he said, well, don't worry, you just take this mantra that I just given you, which has power beyond your comprehension, just as much power as God has. Every bit as much power as God has, this mantra has that power, because they're no different. And so if you just chant this mantra, everything that you're talking about will get fixed, and you'll make it there, So, okay, that's what I set my mind to. And I ended up, being in a house where police came, and I ended up getting arrested with a false passport that I had at the time just gotten in order to go to India. And so now I'm arrested with a false passport, and I'm in jail. Anyway, the story goes on and on. It's really interesting, because I ended up getting out of jail, in an impossible situation because of that mantra, which is a story I'll tell you in detail if you want to hear it. So I get out, and I get taken down to Los Angeles, and I get somebody else's ID and another passport, and I go to India. But on the way to India, I stopped in London, because I wanted to see what happened to my band. We had a manager, we had a record deal, we had a road manager, we had equipment, all this stuff. So I ended up going there. I went to see our road manager. His name was Peter Saunders. And hey, what's going on? And he says, I said, where can I stay? He says, hey man, your equipment's being used by Jeff Beck now. He's got his own group called the Jeff Beck Group. And we had Marshall set, and he said he's renting them out to the Jeff Beck Group, and he's now their road manager. And he's got Jeff Beck staying in an apartment, in a flat, and you can go stay with him. I'll put you in. So he took me over and introduced me to Jeff, and Jeff was super nice, and I stayed with them for a couple of weeks. So I ended up staying in London for a few months until the end of the year. And in January 68, I went to India. And when I got to Brindavan, which is another dimension compared to the West, there was no Westerners there. They had never seen a Westerner there. I mean, this was like completely, the first 4 years I was there, I never saw another Westerner at all. I mean, there just was no Hare Krishna. There was no tour. There was some Indians, pilgrims would come through, but basically it was very quiet, And I was living in an ashram. I went to the ashram that Prabhupada told me to go to. Swamiji told me to go to, and there was nothing going on. They said he's gone back to America. They didn't speak a word of English. They said he's gone back to America. You can't stay here. There's nothing going on. Go somewhere else. And so it was dark, and I'm in this weird place in India. And so I went to this ashram. They gave me the address of somebody. They said he's related to your guru. So I went to this other ashram where there was this other Swami who was related to my guru, to Prabhupada. And they were god brothers. And they said, oh, he's not here also. He's in Bombay. Can I stay there? Can I stay here? No, no, you can't stay here. No, but can I stay here and meet him? Oh, yeah, well, you can stay here and meet him, but you got to follow all these rules and don't touch this and don't touch that because you're a malecha. A malecha means a barbarian, you know? A barbarian is basically a person who eats cows. A person who eats cows and drinks whiskey and does all the four pillars of vice, according to Hinduism, is eating meat, drinking, prostitution, and gambling. So I'm just like I'm like some malecha that came from the foreign country. I'm some sahib, you know, who's just like this guy that has no idea about Hinduism, no good qualities, doesn't know right from wrong, doesn't know clean from impure, complete idiot. I said, okay, I'll follow the rules. And so I stayed there. And he came back and said, you can stay here. You can stay here and practice, but you got to follow all the rules. And so I stayed there it was all just Indian sadhus. There was no Westerners at all. Nobody spoke English except Swami Ban, you know, the guru who lived there. And he was a very senior guru to Swami Prabhupada because Swami Ban had been a guru or had been a sadhu all his life, you know, which means he'd become a student monk and then become a monk. You know, he's never married or had sex or so he was a celibate. And he'd been a monk since 1922, I think, 23. 1923 is when he became a monk. So he had a long history of, he was in his 70s. And so I was living with all these Indian sadhus, maybe 10 or 15 guys. And it was a super serious life where nobody had anything to talk about except spiritual life. And nobody had really much to talk about at all. People were reading the books and chanting their mantras and joining 3 times a day to have the ceremony in the temple. And everybody was, you know, nobody had any other business except that, you know. And for me, it was like the world was on fire. You know, my band was gone. My freedom was gone. My country was gone. I didn't know what's going to happen to me. I got this false passport. The only way out was in, you know, the only way out was in. And so spiritual life was my only escape. And so it became a more serious thing than just somebody looking. I mean, you know, when you're looking to escape, you're much more motivated than if you're just looking to get out. So I was looking to escape the world and go to the spiritual world, and that's what Krishna consciousness was all about. It was about developing a love of God, so that at the time of death, God is who you think about. And if you think about God at the time of death, then you don't get born back into another cycle. You get out of this. You go to the spiritual world where God resides eternally. You know, and so this became the. For me, it went from, you know, just basic Christianity as a kid that I didn't really care about to the philosophical side, which is Buddhism and the kind of you're not this body, the spirit soul, how it differs from matter, to Krishna being God himself. And all these things kind of came together, and there was a way to actually worship him, you know, a way to actually worship God through this mantra, through his puja, through reading books about him, to just because the more you know about God, the more you become attached. The more you become attached, the more you develop affection. The more you develop affection, so that the last thing a person thinks about at the time of death is the thing they're most attached to. So if a person can acquire attachment to God as the highest attachment in their lifetimes, then their liberation is guaranteed. And liberation doesn't mean just merging into the void. Liberation means going to Vaikuntha, going to the spiritual world, going to heaven, you know? Mm. And basically, as I saw it after that, you know, religion is basically 2 types of religions in this world. Because, of course, it's ridiculous to say God cannot be anything but Jesus. You know, before God became Jesus, there was no such thing as God. Or maybe he just never came for a zillion years, and all of a sudden he decided, I'm going to go to this one little insignificant planet. It's like a grain of sand on a beach, and I'm going to go there for the first time in history of the universe. And I'm going to start the first and only religion. I mean, it's so ridiculous because God is so unlimited, you know. God is like you know, when they have the story of Krishna, they have the Rasa dance. Like, you know, Krishna, there was however many gopis there was as many Krishnas, and each one was doing things separately, differently. So there was, like, to say that God is limited is pretty unlimited, stupid. Because how are you going to limit God? You know. that there was never religion before Jesus, and that Jesus himself is God. And that, because even amongst Christianity, there's 101 different groups that all hate each other's guts.
It seems like in the West, maybe it's an aspect of the personification of the Christian kind of rigidity is the Western kind of boundary rigidity, and in the East, there's you've lived in the East how long? Since the 90s? You've been in the East
No,
longer than I've been
I
alive.
I came to the East in '68, January '68, and I've been here ever since.
So yeah, you've been in the East longer than I've been in the West.
Yeah, more than 50 years.
And longer than I've been in this body. And I guess let me say a little bit about a testimony of mine, and then I'll hand the baton back to you because I'm curious as to how you organically sprouted into a holistic integration, spiritual, philosophical, with also practical utility as like a biomechanical understanding. And I sense that's maybe even what led you into your work with gemology and Joytish and understanding, electromagnetism, and how spirit affects the physical and things like gems, things like astrology. And how karma manifests. So we go to this church, and I go because my mom wants Belle and I to go. It's not something I would do on my own. I would say that if someone like forced me to say how I identified, maybe it's more of a yogi than anything else. I love Yeshua, but I've had an experience with what I call true Yeshua, because when I meet people who claim Jesus, in all honesty, it sounds like white Jesus. It sounds like this bastardized version of what I know as a true revolutionary rabbi yogi who really, really did live and who was a badass, but also taught unity, Christ consciousness, Christos consciousness, fourth density being, and was a true maverick and a revolutionary. And then somehow through the Roman Catholic, Christian, Italian, Americana, Illuminati cabal, there's this watered down thing, and these books get edited out, and then these books stay inside, and boom, here we go, here's this book, and if you don't do this, then you're fucked. If you don't do this vibe, you don't do this book, you don't do this guy, you don't do this way, you are bad, you're going to hell. Your way is definitely not the way. This is the only way, and we'll kill you over it. And there's this history of people who just murder over Jesus. And my awakening integrated that information chronologically, also based on ayahuasca was huge for me, and ayahuasca showed me Yeshua. Ayahuasca showed me Jesus in a non-Christian way. It showed me Jesus from the perspective of like the jungle, of like, yeah, this is what life becomes. But I also saw a yogi and Paramahansa Yogananda and Sadhguru and these other yogic perspectives that helped me understand the yoga of Jesus, which Yogananda actually has a book called The Yoga of Jesus. And so I'm there yesterday and in Easter, and I hear this emphasis of you're a sinner. No, there's nothing you can do about it. You are a broken, dirty sinner. And I remember that was something that I really struggled with early on, of this concept of inherent sin, or born guilt, like inherent guilt that's kind of just like oven cooked into your being. And Christianity almost like wields that as this tool or a hook to make you need Jesus. And also this thing about it that doesn't feel good for me is this social pressure to proselytize, that we know Jesus is the way, and what do, everybody? We go tell everybody that Jesus is the way. And there's something about it that, I don't know, maybe because I saw my dad sometimes tell other people that his way was right, and if you disagreed with him, then you were wrong, and fuck you. And it just felt very violent, and it felt very unintellectually sound. It felt very unloving, and it felt, in all honesty, even from a young perspective, I just didn't feel true. How can your perspective be the only perspective? I'm already skeptical, because the guy who says, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, that sounds more true right away from me. And I had young discernment, and I would say that my indigo Christos consciousness started coming on as a teenager. So I was kind of philosophically discerning. And so, yeah, this our way or the highway, and not only our way or the highway, but our way or eternal damnation is the only, polarizing options. Just felt so like, whoa. And so the yogic pathway introduced me to this very organic, felt like reality of spirituality, which was, this is between you and God. Us as a culture, we'll be here and we'll share books with you and we'll share our practice with you. And here's a guru can introduce you to the practices that will help you get closer to God. But ultimately, it's between you and God. It's not something that you should be talking about. It's not something that you should be trying to convince other people about. It's not something that you should pressure your friends into following your path. Maybe it's not the path for them. Actually practice accepting that others may have a different path than you. So all of these things came, I find yoga when I'm 26, really. And I find Raja and Kriya yoga right around that same time. And I became like fascinated because it felt so scientifically true, and ultimately kept uncovering this trauma that I felt like I had with Christianity, with this American Western hyper masculine Father God up in heaven, Father this, the man, Jesus, the Son, the Father, all this hyper masculine referenced pathway, which felt like I kept getting clearer and clearer that Jesus is awesome. But Christianity became really weird, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel safe. It didn't feel true, and it didn't feel Christ conscious. It didn't feel loving. So off of all those references, what would you say is, something that's crystallized in your understanding as like a primary difference between the Eastern yogic, non-dual, integral philosophical perspectives and this Western hyper-Christian perspective? What is that? What is that difference that also seems to leak into the political stuff as well?
Well, the biggest difference is that, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear? The biggest difference is that that in Asia and in the Vedanta, they never state that there's only one particular incarnation or only one particular way. And even a person who follows a particular path, like Raja Yoga, they're never going to say that a Christian's wrong or anybody's wrong. Okay, that's your path. That's fine. This is my path. God is so infinite that he has more than one path. and there's even a verse in Sanskrit, if you don't mind, I'll recite it. It says, Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabditi, which means it is said by the knowers of truth that the truth is non-dual substance, non-dual substance. And it is known in three ways: is Brahman. Brahman means the all-pervading infinite void. Paramatma, the interpenetrating microscopic manifestation of the personality of God in each heart, the Paramatma. The yogis meditate on the Paramatma, the supersoul. And then Bhagavan, God himself, who lives in the spiritual world and who's responsible for creation, maintenance, destruction of the material world, and who sometimes comes into these material worlds and manifests different paths and different ways to him. And so in Asia, they never have this feeling. Like even a Hindu would never look at a Muslim and say, that guy's not religious. He would say, okay, I follow this particular path, and that guy's a Muslim and he follows that particular path. But a Muslim is not going to look like that. He's going to say, I follow Islam and this guy has to be killed, Because or a Christian would say, I follow Christianity and this guy doesn't, and this guy has to go, But that Hindu's never going to say, oh, I follow Hinduism and he's a Christian. Okay, fine. And that guy's a Muslim. Okay, fine. Just don't make trouble. That's all. Just don't make trouble. You follow your thing. I'm not going to think that you don't have religion, because I know God is not limited to one thing or one time in the history of the world. And so And the second thing is that from the philosophical point of view, in Asia, whether it's Buddhism or Hinduism or any variety of those, you have reincarnation. You have the samsara chakra, the wheel of life, where you get born, you grow, you get old, you get sick, you die, you get born again, and go over and over. And this is not just human lives; it's through animals and all kinds of species. And the soul actually starts out at the smallest level and works its way up to the human life form of life, and then human form of life has so many varieties until they actually start using their human intelligence to start seeing that they're different than their bodies, which an animal can't do because they don't have buddhi. And then that buddhi is what separates a human from an animal. And the human can say, wait a minute, I'm not this body. This is not I arm. This is my arm, you know? And so then that's when spiritual life starts. And the human form of life is considered a great attainment because it is in the human form of life that one has the facility to make spiritual advancement. And below the human form of life, they don't have that facility to intentionally make spiritual advancement. Although they can come to the human form of life, and not that everybody does, because Krishna says in the Gita, he says, out of thousands of people, one really strives for perfection. And out of thousands of those who strive for perfection, one really understands me. That's what Krishna says. He says, Manushyanam Sahasreshu, out of thousands of men. One really tries for perfection. And out of thousands of those who become siddha, one really understands me. So it's not going to be a common thing that we're going to go convert the world, because people who understand God and who can, they're rare people. They're rare people. And you can go out and tell 10,000 people about God or Jesus or whatever you want, and there's only a few of them that are going to get it. Or that it doesn't even matter if they get it or not, as long as we get it. Because at the time of death, none of those people are going to be able to help me or you, or we're going to have just going to be between me and God and whoever I've developed attachment to throughout my life, whether it's a wife or an animal or family, or whether it's somebody else, or whether it's God, or whatever I've become the most attached to, I'm going to get born in that kind of a way in the next life. Like they have the story of Bharat Maharaj, after whom India is still named Bharat. Bharat Maharaj was a king, and he gave up his kingdom. And to make a short story, he gave up his kingdom and he went to live in the forest. And he got totally almost liberated, and he became so detached. And he was just living as a monk in a hermitage. But one day he found a baby deer. Its mother tried to jump across the river and gave birth in the mid jump, and the baby deer was being washed away. And he first thought, "Oh, this is just an illusion. I'm not going to go for this. And this is nothing. This has nothing to do with me. This is just material energy. Forms come, forms go." Before it was Earth, now it's the baby deer. Later it'll be Earth again. What am I getting excited? But then his kingly way made him get up, and he saved this baby deer. And now he had to start taking care of this baby deer. And he started, feeding it and worrying, and it started teasing him. And he was having a hard time doing his meditation. This baby was playing with him. And then when the baby got bigger, started going off, and he couldn't find it, and he started getting worried about it. And he got and so at the time of death, they say, he was sick and old, and they say a serpent came into his hut, and the baby deer was laying right next to him, looking into his eyes, and he was looking at the deer, thinking, "Who's going to take care of this deer once I'm gone?" And he died, and then he found himself in the body of a baby deer, but he still had the memory of his past life because he was so advanced, and so he thought, "Oh, look how stupid I am!" I gave up kingdom and beautiful queen and 5 children and the whole world, and just to get attached to a deer, and now I'm an animal. This is a story from the Bhagavatam. So he went back to the place where this had happened. He just left his mother, and he did something that yogis do sometimes. He went up to his waist in the water in the river and just fasted until death to get rid of that karma that had him in that deer body. And then after that, he died, then he was born as the son of a Brahmin, but he didn't want to get attached to being a Brahmin or so he just acted like a fool all the time. So there's this whole long story about how a person, whatever they cultivate, they're going to be attached to, and whatever they're attached to is what they're going to attain in the next life. whether they like it or not, or whether they believe it or not. So the idea of reincarnation or not being a one lifer. If people ask me, over here for years, what's the difference between here and America? I said, in America, everybody's running around thinking there's only one life. Get out of my way. I don't have any second chance, This is an obstacle. Blow it away. But in Asia, they think I got millions of lives, and this is not the last one. And it was, it's like if I do bad deeds, I'm going to get bad results. If I do good deeds, they believe in karma and reincarnation. And in the West, they basically don't. They're basically one lifers, and that's pretty pathetic. Because animals are the same way. Animals are one lifers. They don't have any idea about reincarnation, or they have no idea about good karma, bad karma. They just know fear and eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing. Just like humans. Humans who think like animals, eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing. No idea about reincarnation. So this one life only is the one part of Christianity. I don't blame Christianity for it. I blame whoever, reduced Christianity down to whatever it is now. Because I hear comedians running around in the West saying, ha ha, 7 days God created the world. Ha ha, how funny. How could you do it in 7 days? I'm like, really? Did they use the English word day? Were they talking about a human day? I mean, what are you talking about? How ridiculous. Trying to say God created it in 7 human days? I mean, why are you thinking it was a human day? And why does even day have to mean a day? Doesn't it just mean a period? So who translated these things? Who gave the spin to them? And who who took all the philosophy out of it? Because there's a whole period where Jesus is said to have gone to India, the lost years, and there's books about it. There's even places in India where they have shrines to where he went and things that he left there. But he didn't come back he didn't come back from India, which is a land of saints and sages and rishis, where you can talk really high philosophy. He came back to a bunch of fishermen. You're not going to be talking too much philosophy to these guys. You just tell them to behave themselves. That's a stretch. And so that's what I see. I don't see Christianity as being very sophisticated in the sense of philosophy. I don't see them having any idea of reincarnation or karma. And to me, those are kind of like the basics of life. If you take out karma and reincarnation, you're just a non-human, intellectually speaking, because that's what the animals think. They don't think any different than that. For me in Asia, I'm dealing with people everywhere, good, bad, and ugly, who all believe in reincarnation, all believe in karma. For better or for worse, they all believe in that. And that just produces a whole different kind of society, Produces a whole different people. If you've got one life and no such thing as karma, oh man, get out of my way,
Do you feel you've seen a kind of connective thread, connective corollary between the kind of I'm right, get out of my way style of Christianity that obviously was prominent and potentially the only overlaying philosophical kind of structure for the founding fathers of America, and obviously America itself has coagulated into a very distorted picture away from where the founders kind of intended it, and now we find ourselves at another crux in the fork in the road as well, anthropologically, and I kind of see that ontologically as a mapped mirror. There's this philosophical departure, and the kind of preeminent religious philosophy, spirituality of this land has coagulated. The politics of the land have coagulated, and there's also a kind of masculine archetype that leads that way that itself seems like it has derailed a bit. Do you see, I'm sure you deal with Westerners and Western concepts a lot, and I'm sure you've met others in the yogic world that kind of probably see the same thing, which is there, and have you seen this corollary between the West and its coagulations and Christianity and its coagulations?
Well, what they've done to Christianity is to place a ridiculous limit on God Himself. Because in India, like in Asia, you got mostly it's a Buddhist country, but anybody can be any religion as long as they're not making trouble or breaking the law. And everybody, and ties are going to be seen in a Christian church. Okay, those people believing in Jesus. I believe in Buddha, and that guy's a Hindu, and he believes in what he believes in. So what's the problem? But nobody's thinking, hey, man, I believe in the right thing, and everybody else is believing in that. That just doesn't exist in Asia. It just doesn't exist. I mean, Muslims think that way. The good Muslims, by the way, the good Muslims are the worst ones. The only good Muslims are bad ones. So anyway, the good Muslims, that means the ones who are serious. They think, oh my God, we can't be having non-Muslims. We can't be having non-Muslims.
Right.
If you're going to be a non-Muslim, you're going to have to pay a tax. That's how low you are. It's called jirza. And so, depending on how big the population of Muslims are in any country, to that extent, it becomes more and more Muslim law. So if it goes over 18, I've actually seen a scientific survey where if it goes over 18, 20%, you start getting into serious problems. If as long as it's under 18%, it can be controlled. And the countries where it's 100% Muslim, that's where you have 100% Sharia law, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, 100% Saudi. Everything's death penalty and Sharia law, Sharia law. Right. And if it's below 18%, then you've got a chance. You've got like here in Thailand, it's like 9% Muslims. But the Muslims here are fine. They're all Thais, and okay, nobody's thinking that my religion is the only religion. Nobody, even the Muslims who come here that live here don't really think that.
When so you have this kind of artistic rebel, what a moment. Vietnam's happening in the late 60s, and you're kind of departing this life as a musician. And you find psychedelics, it opens up your third eye, it opens up your mind, it opens up your philosophical kind of rendering of what's possible. And then you go to India and you go to an ashram. Obviously, non-duality and Vedantic kind of philosophy augments you big time. And at some point, you find Jyotish and you find this calling to move into being a gemologist and use astrology to help prescribe people with ailments or desires that they want to maybe remedy, stones and gems. Tell us a little bit about how that piqued you. Why did it grab you? Why did it inspire you so much?
Well, it didn't inspire me. It was because the whole time I was in India in the ashram, I was just following the spiritual path. I was following the path of the Mahajans, the great saints, and all the people I was living with were following the same thing, and everybody was being super good etiquette, and everybody was polite, and everybody was acting like the deity was in the temple, and you couldn't make sound with your feet, and you had to live a spiritual life, and if you didn't want to live a spiritual life, then no sense staying around here because this is what's going on, And so everybody was in that ashram for 7 years. I was there, and then I had to leave because. A bunch of reasons, mainly because the Americans found out where I was. And so I went to Nepal. And didn't have a passport because the last 3 years that I was in India, I didn't even have a passport because I came to India with a false passport. I used somebody else's ID to get a passport because I couldn't get my own passport back in the beginning, in 68. And so after 3 years of being there, that passport expired. And so I didn't have a passport for the last 3 years I was there. And so when I actually went to Nepal, I had to walk across the border and through the jungle and, without a passport. So I get to Nepal and I don't know what to do. And I'm a fugitive again. And I was always a fugitive that whole time, but I didn't have an ashram to live in. It was all hippies up there and it was a crazy scene. This is like 74. Then I get a telegram from a guy named Sham Shunder, who I knew from the Hare Krishnas back in the Haight-Ashbury days. And he had subsequently gone to London and met the Beatles and gotten them him and them and George Harrison all involved in the Hare Krishnas. And he got Peters. And when he was in India, he met a family in Hyderabad who had discovered rubies on their property. But this time, India was under, it was kind of a socialist country. And so they were afraid that if they were to reveal it to the government, that the government would nationalize it. And so they had roped Sham Shunder the American guy, Shamsunder, into helping him. And so Shamsunder sent me a telegram to Kathmandu telling me, I swear, it said, discovered ruby mine, come immediately. Man, I should have kept that. Discovered ruby mine, come immediately. And so I go to Hyderabad, sneak across the border again, get on a train and get down to Hyderabad, which I'd never been to before, and go to this place where he's staying with these Indians, and they've got, cookie tins full of rough rubies. And rough rubies means, cabochon quality, not opaque and not transparent, translucent, So they were low quality and low cost. They weren't like $10,000 a carat. They're more like $10 a carat quality, And so, but they were, millions of it. And so he wanted me to help him to set up a cutting factory in Bangkok. I'm like, where is Bangkok? Thailand. Where is Thailand? I just spent 7 years in India. I don't know anything about it. I don't even know who's the president. I don't know anything, And because there's no newspaper at this ashram, there was no radio, there was no TV, there was no phone, there was no electricity. I mean, it was pretty Stone Age, And it was just the way it should be. And so I went there. So he sent me to Kathmandu. He had me go to Bombay first, and I got a passport, a false passport, in the black market, and then I went to back to Kathmandu, then went from there to Bangkok for the first time ever to find a cutting factory to start cutting these rubies. But when I was in Hyderabad, when we first got involved with these rubies, I was like, rubies, gems? I never thought about it. So I went to the bookstores in Hyderabad, and I found, because I can read Hindi and Sanskrit, so I got books in Hindi and Sanskrit and books in English on gems, and they were all about astrology and gems. There was like the healing powers of gems, the astrological properties of gems, Indian gemology, healing through gems. It was all related to Vedic astrology. I'm like reading all this stuff, and this is because all of a sudden it wasn't just gems and money and ornaments. It was like it was a sacred objects. These were sacred objects, And when they were good quality, they were considered really good sacred objects. When they were low quality, they were considered junk sacred objects. So the good ones were really valuable. So anyway, that's what got my interest in. So when I went to Kathmandu, to Nepal, rather to Bangkok to start cutting these stones, I went to Bali after that with my ideas of starting to make astrological jewelry. And I got other stones from Bangkok and sapphires and things. I started giving them to the goldsmiths in Bali and giving my drawings and putting herbs in there and symbols and astrological symbols and making designs based on my concept of astrological jewelry. And I'm still doing it to this day. I'm still doing it.
Wow. Wow.
It was an accident, really, because if he would have never called me to come to Hyderabad, and there wouldn't have been this ruby mine, I would have never thought about gems because I wasn't thinking about them, and there was no influence about gems when I was in the ashram.
What has been one of the more, I guess, profound turnouts from maybe working with someone or getting someone a prescribed like gem that really suited the current moment of their life, healing properties or manifestation, or gets them in alignment? Maybe speak a bit to the kind of more mundane aspects and also the more profound aspects of like what can happen if somebody who needs it gets the perfect gem at that moment in their astrological progression.
Well, the thing with gems is there's basically mundane gemology and supramundane gemology. In the West, there's only mundane gemology. Okay, you've got, here are the physical properties of a gem. It's hardness, its refractive index, its specific gravity, all the characteristics, the optical characteristics, physical characteristics that make it identifiable and knowable, that are used by gem labs to certify gemstones. And then there's value, so that's the mundane gemology. You've got your physical properties and you got your values. And super mundane is, what does this thing have besides that? So according to the scriptures, like a ruby, if it's good quality, it's got the energy of Surya. And Surya is an influence from astrology that affects one's courage and one's bravery, and and just like moon it's got its influence in natural pearl, not cultured pearls, which are not pearl inside. Natural pearls are all pearl, but you have a glass of water and it's all water. You know, a cultured pearl would be like inside is not water, but a little layer of water on the top.
Right.
So you're not going to drink that. So anyway, pearls related to the moon, and moon influences emotions, and herbs, and feelings, and so these were all related to different diseases, and gems became a metaphysical thing that also had a physical side, and value was just incidental. And so that's when I started making these talismans and came to Bangkok and going back to Bali and back to Bangkok. And after a few years of this, instead, by 1978, I met some friends who told me that, they've given the amnesty now, because I was a fugitive. It's 12 years that going on at this point, 12 years. They said, yeah, they've given the amnesty. America's given the amnesty. You can go back and get it cleared up. And so they helped me get back, and I went back through Mexico because I didn't have a passport, didn't have a valid passport. So I went back to Mexico and landed in Mexico City and took a plane to TJ, and then had two friends come down and picked me up in two cars. And one of them took my bag, and the other one took me. And when I get to the border, they say, state your nationality. And I'm like, American. Okay. And here I was back in America after 12 years. I had no idea where my parents were. I had no idea where my family was, where anybody was, And they took me to Laguna Beach, and that's where I started living. So I stayed there for a few years and went to GIA and got my gemological degree and cleared up my legal status. I had to go back to the Army and get a discharge. They gave me a Chapter 10, which means unfit for military service. And I had to go to court, and then they gave me 600 hours of public service, for the false passport charges. And so I was, at that point, I was a free man. I was able to, my legal status was cleared up. So then Glenn and I, who was my steel guitar player in the original band, we said, hey, man, 12 years ago, we got screwed. Let's try it again. So we tried to make some music, but it just wasn't like it used to be. And we didn't have the British guy that was in our band, because we had an American band with a British guy, a really good British player. We were 4 Americans and a British guy, one of the first international rock groups, misunderstood. And so, it wasn't the same as the 80s. Was a terrible period for music. Because it just it was hair metal and everything was just a mess. Nobody had any message, and there was really no psychedelic to speak of, and it became uninspiring if you don't even have a message. Like I hear Jiva's bands, and they're singing love songs. Yeah, baby, I missed you so. Like, oh man, I can't think of a more. I mean, it's not like I'm against romance, but I just can't think of a less intellectual subject. So I was like really inspired by the Misunderstood, because when I first heard the Yardbirds, they had a song called Mister, You're a Better Man Than I, and another song called Shapes of Things. And this was like, these guys had a message, They had a social message, they had a justice message, they had a spiritual message, they had an anti-war message. It was all there in their music. And I'm like, man, that's the only reason to even play music, if you don't have a message,
Right.
And so we became like that in our songs, the Misunderstood songs that are still selling today. They're all I Can Take You to the Sun, and Find the Hidden Door, and it's the name of some of our songs that we recorded in England. Wow. Your dad would probably like some of them, because we're pretty Yardbirdsy. So anyway, then I realized I can't take it in America, because I was there a few years now. I'm back in 79, and so by 86 I said, let me out of here, because everybody was like tight and the cops were everywhere, and I could see it was heading to a police state, which it is, and I could see that was going to be the case, and people were pissed off, and everybody was suing everybody, and it was suing people was practically a business, or rather being sued was even a business. It was everybody was people were looking to get in car accidents, looking for people were everybody was, and I can't even believe what's happened today, because I left there in 86, and it was just starting. And, since then I haven't ever talked to a policeman or ever seen any, it just doesn't exist over here. All that nonsense, this doesn't exist. People are polite over here.
Wow. there's something there in terms of like, so the socialistic perspective of political kind of, organizing a community, organizing a country. I don't know much about like the politics of India or Thailand. I know that, Chinese kind of government gets a pretty bad rap for being communist, but they also create like a lot of the manufacturing of the whole world, and that's because of the lower wages and blah 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 blah. What have you noticed about like, because America still seems like it has this spiritual energy to it, which there's some indigo kids that I connect with that kind of talk about the return of Christ and the return of Christ consciousness and the idea of Sophia as literally kind of feminine Christ consciousness manifesting through the America as the kind of liberty statue kind of Mesoamerican kind of fulfillment of the prophecy of this new land coming forth that will have a new political philosophy, a new spiritual philosophy, which Christianity being at the baseline of America while all of this other stuff is happening is kind of weird, and the water is getting quite muddy and has been for a long time. But what do you see as the, I guess, what do you see as the counterbalance for a place like India or a place like Thailand's seems like really great spiritual beliefs? What is the other side of that coin of their political beliefs, and how fulfilled are you there? Or what have you noticed is the difference between that American and that Thai or Indian kind of political spiritual, what's working and what's not?
Well, first of all, if you've got a society that's based on the principle of reincarnation and karma, then you've got a whole different society than if you don't have. If people just one life only, you die. In the West, it's basically what do they say? Life's a bitch and then you die. Oh man, that's a pretty deep philosophy, pal.
It's a bummer. Yeah, bummer.
But I mean that's basically what it boils down to. If you don't have any belief in reincarnation and karma,
right?
Even you could say if a person were to commit some sins and go to hell, how do you commit enough sins to go to hell eternally, unless you commit them eternally?
Right.
Because I mean, it's like like in India, they also have hell. In Thailand, they also have hell. If you commit sins, you go to hell, but it's only temporary. You get into hellish situations. It's just mental, but it's only temporary. Once the offense is expired, you're not in that situation anymore. You get reborn, or you go to heaven even. So and even heaven is temporary. So the spiritual world is not heaven or hell. Heaven and hell are both temporary realms according to Hindus. Swarga and Narok. Narok is hell. Swarga is heaven. But these are temporary worlds that cease to exist when the creation is withdrawn. But the spiritual world never ceases to exist. It's always eternal. It was never created. It never ends. And that's where God resides. And it's infinite. It's almost inconceivable. And God is not limited to one form. And there's not one spiritual world, so to speak, where God can. So they have unlimited Vaikunthas, where God, however you want to, He's going to be seen. Because a person is going to go to that particular spiritual realm where God exists in that particular corresponding attachment that a devotee has. So it's just a whole different kind of thing. But politics-wise, you've got Asia. The problem is not socialism and democracy. The problem is nationalism versus globalism. Because what China is doing by example, even though it's good ways of production, it's globalism that all these countries, and especially in the Five Eyes countries, all these the EU countries, they all are really following China. They want the ID, they want the digital, they want the the chip in the arm. They want everybody on. They want complete control of 15-minute cities. You can't. I even told my sisters 12 years ago. I said, in the future, they were talking about getting electric cars. In the future, You're not even going to be allowed to have a car. You want to go somewhere, you're going to have to contact the government, give them a reason, and they're going to give you a time period. They're going to send over a capsule that'll take you there, bring you back, and otherwise you can't do anything, you know? And you're not going to be able to spend money or leave. It's got to be completely controlled. And that's globalism. Nationalism is for freedom. Nationalism is based on God, you know, in God we trust. But globalism is based on we trust in ourselves. Globalism is based on nihilism. Nihilism is worse than atheism. Nihilism says nothing has any meaning. There's no creator. There's no nothing. The only meaning that is in this world is whatever we give it to it, and therefore we are God, and we're going to be in control, and we're going to run it the way we think it should be run, and that's nihilism. There's no meaning to anything. There's no God. You know, you've got theists who believe in God as a person, and you've got atheists who some people say they're Satanists. They believe in devil as a person. But then you've got nihilists who don't believe they don't believe in God or the devil. They say there's no meaning to anything. There's just no meaning. And that's the thing that they're really pushing is nihilism. So nihilism is what is manifested politically in the form of globalism, which is complete surveillance control, just like in China, but in the whole world. Money, everything. And then you've got nationalism, where that is based on in God we trust, and our country, and our nation, and our freedom, and we believe in freedom, and we're not going to go along with this globalism. We don't want to see the United Nations. We don't want to see the WHO in control of our country. Fight we face is globalism versus nationalism, which is religion versus nihilism. Some people say, oh, I'm agnostic. Agnostic just means nothing. You know, agnostic means I don't know and I don't care. Well, that's not a very philosophical position. I don't know and I don't care. That's not a very philosophical. But nihilism means I believe there's no meaning to anything. The only meaning there's going to be is whatever meaning we put to it. And therefore, politics is everything, and the government is God. You know?
Mm.
And that's, you know, that's the real thing. I'm pretty sure your dad knows about this globalism thing, you know? This is the thing that Trump's been talking about for years. They're trying. It's not even about communism. You know, communism and fascism. My own father told me. He said, if you take communism to its farthest extreme, and you take fascism to its farthest extreme, they're both in the same place. Government and business control everything. You know, business controls government. Government controls business. People have no freedom. It's all going. So there is no meaning of fascism and communism. You know, there's either freedom or there's not. You know, and nihilism doesn't give any room for freedom, and nationalism does. And that's why I'm for Thai nationalism. Now over here, you had all these countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, China, India, all these giant countries completely controlled by a handful of white men. I mean, I used to tell the Indians, how did a billion of you people stand there and let a handful of white guys come in and take over the place for hundreds of years? I mean, this is ridiculous, you know? And it happened to Burma, happened to Malaysia, happened to Indonesia, happened everywhere. The whole of China was under the British, you know? We talk about globalism as being unlikely. I mean, it's already hundreds of years ago, they practically had it totally together, you know? There was no communication set up like there is that now. They had the whole world. I mean, the British controlled the whole of China, the whole of India. I mean, that's like half the world right there. They controlled. The only country that wasn't running around doing that was Russia, basically. It was the French, the Portuguese. These are the ones running around controlling everything. And the only country in the whole of Asia that did not get controlled or conquered was Thailand. They were outsmarted. They outsmarted the British. That's what the meaning of the word Thai means free. It's the only country in the whole of Asia that was never colonized. They remained there, and the reason they were able to do that is because of the Chakri dynasty, the royal family line that we still follow up to the current King 10. Some of those kings were greater than others, but they're all equally important because you have a line, and the people rally around that central point of if you insult the king, if you insult members of the royal family, you're insulting every single person, you know? That's the way they feel. And so nobody insults the king. Nobody Then you got these Western newspapers over here, then these Western NGOs, and they're trying to make trouble. They're trying to divide the Thai people. Oh, the king's so good, making up all these lies. And I could turn you on to a lot of information about this, but they tried to do it about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They had the red shirts. They created this whole rebellion against the king, against the government, and eventually didn't work because the army is ultimately under the king. And they aren't going to let the king be thrown out of his own country just because some Americans got the money. And so,
so there's a king, but it's not. There's a king in Thailand, but it's not like an overlord. It's like whatever tyrannical.
No, the constitutional monarchy. It became a constitutional monarchy 100 years ago.
So the Constitution holds in place freedoms for the individual, so it ends up looking kind of like a republic or a democracy where people have individualized freedoms, and that's the national kind of thing that's wanting to be protected.
Yeah, so it's a constitutional monarchy where the king has to sign all final laws, but there's a parliament, there's a Congress, it's all elected, and there's the politics doesn't affect the king. The king has to sign off on whoever it's going to be, So, and he has to sign all laws into power, and so that they kept that line going for longer than America's existed, And so that is the thing that kept America from being kept Asia, rather Thailand, from being colonized. Because every time the Portuguese or the French, whoever came in here, the Thai people, they rallied around their king, and they would never be divided. And you can't divide if you can't divide people, you can't conquer them, And so Thailand is the one country that was outsmarted the British. And even when people say, "Well, what about World War II?" The Japanese came in here and said, "Hey, man," and I said, "Yeah, well, look what happened." Thai said, "Yeah, what's up?" And they said, "Well, we're going to build a railroad all the way to Burma." And Thai said, "Yeah, let's do it." And they built a railroad. And they paid the Thais to do it. And I mean, now Thailand's had a railroad. It's like the Thais are not only not being colonized, they're exploiting the enemy. So it's just a question of how smart people are, and they do it with a smile on their face. They do it with a smile on their face. Like in Thailand, if somebody insults somebody else, people really look down on that person. But if the person gets insulted, acts angry, they even look down worse on that. If you keep your cool, you are highly respected in Thailand. If you keep your mouth shut and don't say something stupid, you're highly respected. If you lose your temper, that's really frowned upon, And so, in America, it's just the opposite. If you keep your mouth shut and don't say something back in a smart ass way, you're not Rambo. If you're polite, you're a wimp. I mean, it's like you can't win in America because everybody's Rambo, And so here it's like if somebody crashes into your car, and we're very sorry, and they keeps us cool. Everybody in Thailand's here we are. We're so happy to be here in this country. Everybody's cool. If somebody gets angry, and then everybody's oh man, it's with this guy, Even he's the guy that got wronged. He's the guy losing his cool. So everybody's like, God, man, I used to have some sympathy for this guy, but now he's being a jerk. What's he doing? He's just losing his cool. Well, that's bad. That's pretty bad right here in Thailand. Even to honk the horn, you won't hear a single horn honking. You go to India, you will not hear a single horn not honking. It's like you can tell if one horn stops honking. It's like a giant cacophony, and you can in that cacophony, one horn is not honking. Oh man, something's up. In India, if somebody stops honking the horn, that's when you know something's up. Look out. But in Thailand, nobody honks the horn. Nobody. It's like if you go boop, everybody in town's like, huh? What a savage. What a freaking caveman. What's the big deal? Why do you got to honk the horn like that? You just don't ever hear Indians come over here. They go, God, it's like a dead silent. What are you, dead or something? No, just nobody honks the horn because that's considered highly rude. And if you will hear the horn honk, in the case where somebody's trying to give a little warning to somebody, they go beep, just like that, It's never bah. And I've never seen anybody flip the bird in Thailand. You know how in America everybody flips each other the bird? I've never seen it in Thailand. It's just not something it's just not cool,
Right.
And so, so you've got a country here that's never been conquered. never been conquered because people are rallying around the king. They've never been divided in spite of the greatest efforts of Western countries to do so. And that's so far so good. And that's why I chose this country, because they believe in reincarnation, they believe in karma, they respect all religions, and they have never been conquered. They were the one country that outsmarted all the white men. I'm like, yes, that's where I want to go. Really, I mean, you can look at every country in this area, whether it's Burma, Malaysia, Cambodia, every single country, Vietnam, everyone was under the white man. Everyone but Thailand.
I have a question in a different direction. Did you ever have any interaction with members of the Beatles and Prabhupada in that kind of ashram context?
I had interaction with Prabhupada, but not with the Beatles. But I was pretty good friends with Sham Shunder and Mukunda, who went to England and got the Beatles organized and made their friendship. And I heard a lot about it. And it was Sham Shunder and Mukunda who were the last to see George Harrison. He was in LA when he passed away. And they went to, and he asked for them to come, and they came to his house and stayed with him the last day, And I remember Shamsunder telling me that George Harrison, the whole day they were just sitting there chanting, and George Harrison was sitting in a wheelchair, and at the end they said they had to go, and he looked up and said, "Thank you." He couldn't really speak. He said, "Thank you," and then he left, and he died that night. He had brain cancer.
Wow.
So they were really, and he made a record with them. But I never met the Beatles, but I did meet Jeff Beck. And I met a bunch of other people in England at the time. I was good friends with the guys from the Creation and this guy. Your dad would know who I mean when I say Alexis Corner. I had never heard of Alexis Corner, so I get to England. We're taking over there in '66, and I get to meet these guys from the Pretty Things and the drummer. And they're telling me, oh, there's this guy, Alexis Corner, who's the father of the music scene there. And he was an older guy. Because I was 20 and he was maybe 35. And he was the father of the blues. And he's the guy that got the Kinks together and the Rolling Stones. And, he was the guy that if he said, you're cool, then you're cool. This is what I was hearing when I got over there. So it turns out that when we first got to England, with the band, we were under a management called T&M Productions, Nigel Thomas and Freddie Maynell Productions. And one of the bands they managed was Alexis Corner. So we ended up playing gigs with Alexis Corner Blues Band. And I mean, everybody worshiped this guy, Your dad will for sure know Alexis Corner, because he's the guy that put together John Mayall and all these guys. He was the real blues father of British blues. So wow. I was good friends with him, and it was just the scene back then in '66. There was really almost nothing there. I couldn't believe it. It was like I just came from America, where there was a million bands in every town. Here I am in London, where it came from. There's like nobody. I mean, the Beatles weren't there, and they were all out of town. But there was like this music scene. There was the Marquee Club we played. And the Marquee Club had Graham Bond organization and the Creation and the Move and these kind of bands. Everybody's trying to get in. We were up there, we were the only American band. We were really heavy rock and roll, heavy Yardbirds type stuff.
Do you remember ever interacting with I don't know, anybody ever talk about the Amboy Dukes, or did you ever hear about my dad before the kind of crescendo of popular notoriety while it was still on that scene?
Honestly, I never heard of your dad until I came back to America in '79. Because I left America, I went to back to England on the way to India in '67. I still hadn't heard of your father. This is like I was on the run and I wasn't really listening that much. And I went to England and so then when I was in England, I was staying with Jeff and he had his own group, and I was listening to these other guys there, and I really wasn't hearing anything about that. And then I went to India, and I never heard anything. I didn't know Hendrix had died. I didn't know any of that stuff, And so it wasn't until '74 that I got to Kathmandu, and that's when I started hearing, Hendrix had died and this kind of stuff, and I didn't even know who was the president. And so then when I came back in '79, I started listening to, I started catching up on the music scene. And right away, is when I first heard your dad, and I remember Cat Scratch Fever was, I think, the first of his songs I ever heard. And then I listened to some of his stuff, and he was definitely a Yardbirds inspired musician. I mean, he'd be the first to tell you, I'm sure. Anybody from that period is going to
Definitely.
say, "Oh, yeah, the Yardbirds. The Yardbirds were the most influential band ever, more than the Beatles or
Yeah.
anybody." You know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we were, like I said, David Frick of Rolling Stone magazine. We had an album come out. We had a CD of old stuff come out in 2001, and he did a review of it in Rolling Stone. And he said we were the American Yardbirds. He said in all but
Wow.
in all but riches and renown, we were the American Yardbirds. That's a good compliment. And there's also a book called The 100
Nice.
Greatest Psychedelic Records. There's a book called 100 Greatest Psychedelic Records published by Record Collector Magazine, still available, that has, like the first one is Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles, and the next one is, Cream or something. So we're number 6 in that book. So I'm pretty happy about that too, because we had one of our songs got a chapter in that book. And a few other lists, like John Peel's Peelinium list, where he put the greatest, because he did it on the BBC over a period of years up until the millennium, till year 2000, where for a period he played 1900, 1901, 1902. Every single one of those years he would come up with a song that had been recorded that was his favorite one. And so he called it the Peelinium, because his name was John Peel. Peelinium list that had all the songs for 100 years. And so for 66, he had 5 songs. He had Hendrix. He had my band, The Misunderstood, I Can Take You to the Sun. He had the Beatles, And Your Bird Can Sing. He had Leonard Cohen. And one other thing, he had like 5 songs, 5 bands. So I was like, man, for 66 to be in that list, sandwiched between Hendrix and the Beatles, yeah, man. Wow. Nobody knows about it, but I'll take it.
Wow. That's pretty legendary. That's amazing.
Yeah, you can see it. You can go on internet, the BBC, or rather, you can just go on Wikipedia. Just type in Peelinium, and you'll see that. Go to 66, and there's 5 bands listed, and we're one of them. It's a list he made for the BBC, and he played on the air. He thought he always talked about us his whole life. John Peel. He became a really big DJ in England back in the. I'm sure your dad knows about John Peel, because he was the biggest DJ in England up until the year 2000 or so. He was huge. He discovered so many people. He pushed so many people, including Hendrix. He was one of the biggest proponents of the British scene, because he was a British guy that went to England when he was young. I'd rather he went to USA and became a DJ in USA, and that's where he discovered us. He was working at a radio station when he was really young, and he heard us play. He said, "God, you guys should go to England." England, where's that? So that's how we got there, because he arranged it. And
yeah, you've lived quite an adventure.
Well, now I'm in Thailand. I've been here for since '86. I'm a Thai citizen, have Thai passport, Thai citizenship, and I don't like at all what's going on in America, and I don't like it even more when those very same people open NGOs over here whose only purpose is to stir up trouble and try to divide the Thai people so that the Americans could come in here and have a base. This is basically what it is, And so they made a lot of trouble here back 10 years ago. They made a ton of trouble. They were finding, the American ambassador publicly going and hanging out with the rebels, openly on the newspaper. Look at the American ambassador going and giving them the high five. Like, God, wait a minute, these are the bad guys. But even when I was in England, I remember in India back in '71, they had the Bangladesh War, where Pakistan was divided into 2 parts, West and East. And East was actually the East Bengal, and West was West Pakistan. And so that was called Pakistan. And that the eastern side of Pakistan, which was the Bengali side, they didn't like, they didn't get along with the other side, which is all a bunch of Punjabis. And the Punjabis passed a rule that, you can't have Bengali language anymore. And so they started the civil war started happening, and the Punjabis sent in a bunch of troops, because that's where the army came from. They were slaughtering all these Bengalis, and there became the Bangladesh War, which took place. And that's how Bangladesh became a country. I was right there in the middle of all that.
Wow.
And and then and at the end of it, Pakistan eventually attacked India, and then India just went in and wiped them out. It was like over in a week, But for about a year and a half, it was pretty hairy. I was in Bombay, and they were having air raids and stuff. And so it was pretty wild. It seemed to be that close to a war. But when I came back to America, nobody had any idea what I was talking about. I remember telling my family, "Oh, I had this Bangladesh." What? What Bangladesh? What war? I mean, people are just oblivious in America. They're just oblivious to what's going on. Just oblivious. I remember telling my family. I remember saying, when I left here, you guys are telling me the communists are the worst things in the world. We got to stop Vietnamese because they're going to play this game of dominoes and they're going to rape your mother and it's all about taking over the world. And I'm like, oh yeah. Well, and then I came back in '79. I'm with my family again. Finally found out where they were, and I'm telling them, you guys kept telling me it was all about communism. You don't even have a clue what Islam is. Islam is here to kill you dead. You either convert or you die, and that's not like me saying that. That's right there. Darul Islam to Darul Jung. It says in Islamic in the Quran. Darul Islam, a world of war, to Darul Jung, or a world of war. A world of Islam or a world of war. Darul Islam to Darul Jung. A world of Islam or a world of war. And they were like, what's Islam? They didn't know anything. I'm like, God, America, man. Jesus. Just don't have a clue. They don't even know how the Federal Reserve works. I was listening to Ron Paul, his dad. Ron Paul's like this.
Yeah.
He's like the one guy that should have been president,
Wow.
One
Yeah,
of
I've heard
the
about
few
it,
sensible one of the few sensible politicians that really anti-war politician, regime change. Right now there's just a proxy war going on in Ukraine, just like Vietnam was a proxy war, And they keep saying, "Oh, it's for democracy." And, oh man, get out of here! The minute you leave Ukraine, it's going to fall in 1 second because they have no money, they have nothing. And how are you even giving them money to support themselves when they have nothing and no money and no power and no weapons? And you're just keeping this thing going for what? And why are you keeping this thing going? Do they deserve to even exist? If they can't even defend themselves, and why are the Russians even attacking? They're attacking because NATO kept coming right to their border, and they kept telling them not to do that for 20 years, some years. And just remember, the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine is why we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. As we said, and we get the Monroe Doctrine: no foreign power from the other side of the world can come instead of shop on our side of the world. That's the Monroe Doctrine. Russia's got their own version of that too. You come right to our friggin' border, with your weapons and, try to take over this country through an illegal coup, this country that's our border country. Right. And you're not going to make it neutral even. Well, we're going to start do something. And I'm like, I'm watching this since this happened since 2014, seeing all this. And then people in America think, oh, this thing all just happened out of nowhere, man. I had a friend tell me, he says, can you imagine they just went up to the border, they just charged in for no reason? I'm like, what are you talking about, Iraq? No, I'm talking about Ukraine. Because I remember in America lined up in the border of Iraq with no justification, with no provocation, and just rolled in there. 10 times worse than Russia ever did, killed millions of people. It wasn't even a worthy opponent, So, but Russia can't do that. No, Russia has to have, Russia can't have a Monroe Doctrine. Anyway, so
wild times.
I'm over here. Yeah, because I remember when I was in India, they were in cahoots with Russia, which means Russia wasn't interfering in them and they weren't interfering in Russia. And it was just kind of like Russia just didn't do anything, And so when the war started, I was in Mumbai at one point, and there was blackouts that we had to cover all the windows because we didn't have any light, and there was anti-aircraft guns going off at night sometimes. It was pretty wild. And in the daytime, one morning, I saw there was a paper on the newsstand that said, America sends 7th Fleet to India, because America had taken the part of the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis are killing their own people and creating this hell, and who were just the absolute worst of this whole thing. They were being supported by Americans, just like the Vietnamese, who were just a bunch of puppets, were being supported in Vietnam. And so I remember I was walking, people came up around me, a big group of people came around me and said, why you have sent the 7th Fleet? Why you have sent the 7th Fleet? Why have I sent the Seventh Fleet to America, to India, And so that just shows you how just by looking like an American, you can get your butt kicked for what America does. I don't know if you ever saw a movie called The Year of Living Dangerously. It was published it was like 1979. It's worth seeing. It's called The Year of Living Dangerously. Super young Mel Gibson and super young Sigourney Weaver. And it's a true story about about two Westerners living in Malaysia or Indonesia during the Sukarno overthrow, and when America overthrew the government, and then becoming really screwed up because of America's activities. You can be a foreigner in a foreign country. If America does something bad, then you're in trouble. Why have I sent the Seventh Fleet? I could have said, well, the reason I sent the Seventh Fleet, I'll tell you honestly, is just to show you guys who's in charge of the U.S. Navy. This little monk here with a shaved head and no passport is in charge of the U.S. Navy, mother. Look out, because that's why I sent the Seventh Fleet here. But the whole thing is ridiculous. I was like, here I am I was thinking, you people are pissed off at America. I'm the one who should be pissed off. I'm the one they're after. They're not even after you. They're trying to catch me. I'm over here a fugitive hiding from these bastards, I've always looked at America as my only enemy I've ever had. I just don't see it as, I see America as having inherent goodness, but the politics of America and the globalist ideals that really are kind of creeping up more and more are just absolutely diabolical. And the media just puts out hogwash after hogwash. Because I've never seen such lies. I've just never, it's really gotten crazy, especially when COVID came out. Oh man, these people are just so full of it. Up is down, down is up, 2 + 2 = 5, or else.
Crazy. I sense that you and my dad are going to have plenty to talk about, both from the Yardbird era of psychedelic rock origins, but also the globalist insanity stuff that's happening.
Well, I'm sure your dad is a big fan of Ron Paul. Ron Paul, who was a military doctor, when he was younger. He was a pediatrician where he delivered like a couple thousands of babies in the military, and then he became a politician, and he was a congressman for many years. Now his son is a congressman, or maybe he's a senator. Rand Paul is his son. But Ron Paul ran for president 2 years in a row. Ron Paul ran for president at an anti-war platform. And he wasn't anti-war per se. He was anti-intervention wars. He was he was anti-business. He was anti-world. He was totally against the military-industrial complex for its own purpose. Hey, listen, military. How many more cruise missiles do you need? We're all full up. What do you mean you're all full up? We can't close this factory down. We got to keep making them. It costs $1 zillion to open a factory like this. What do you mean you're out? Use some. Oh, what are we going to use them? $1 million each. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, send more. And it's like, well, make a war and do something, and be sure and make the war so that it appears that America's on the good side.
Right.
Make it look like they attacked us for no reason, and we're responding in massive forever and ever.
Right.
I see what's going on. It's just so ridiculous. Like Vietnam War was just like, you could ask anybody in the Vietnam War, what's the objective of this war? Search and destroy. Is that a military objective? Search and destroy? Really? Is that a military objective? Like, take Hamburger Hill. Okay, it takes 2 weeks to take that hill. We just lost 300 guys. We just killed 1,000 Vietnamese. Now we're on the top of the hill. Okay, tomorrow, move out. We're going to abandon this place. The next day, the Vietnamese come right back. And what was all that about? And it came down to it that the guys who were soldiers there who didn't even want to be there, they were like, man, there's only one purpose to this war, and that's for me to get back alive. I don't give a damn about this place. I don't give a damn about any of these bullshit stories. I just want to save my ass and get back alive. That's all that matters, and getting out of here in one piece, And what kind of feeling that's not the kind of a thing that a soldier should feel. I don't give a damn about this. There's no goal to any of this. You couldn't possibly kill every Vietnamese in the world, and then say that's victory. And why are we even here? I mean, the French already won the war, and they drove. They had to leave, and why are we here trying to bring it back? You know, I mean, the whole thing was pathetic. And if you really look into it, I'm sure your dad realizes that. If you look into it, the war was totally stupid mistake, and the only people who benefited were the military industrial complex. You know, only ones who benefited. Even now, Laos, Cambodia, they're just there's millions of landmines and cluster bomb all over the place there. Just I mean, farmers are getting blown up every day. You know, still, and they've got and plus they dumped like thousands of tons of Asian orange into the ground and go into the water supplies. Man. And if you ask America, why did you put Agent Orange down? Well, they told us we couldn't see the gooks. We got to kill the gooks. We couldn't see. How come you can't see the gooks? Because trees in the way. Well, get rid of them goddamn trees so you can kill them goddamn gooks. How to get rid of the trees? Man, just put this poison in there and it'll kill the trees. Then you can kill the gooks. I'm like, God, man, with friends like you, who needs enemies?
Jeez Louise. Yeah.
Think about it. They dumped like million tons.
Yeah.
My dad was on a base in Vietnam. He never saw Agent Orange. It was just on that base, you know. He was not dealing with it. He just was on a base where it was stored. And he got terribly sick his whole life from Agent Orange. You know, and ended up dying from it. They had him on 500% disability. I tell you, it's the only Americans can come up with something like 500% disability. If you're 100% disabled, you must be dead as a doornail. You know, how can you be 500% disabled unless they got you covered for the next 5 lifetimes?
Yeah. Well, I have to wrap soon, but I just want to anchor us, and I think there's so much that we'll be able to talk to my dad about, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time. And it's pretty late over there. What time is it over there?
Now it's 1 o'clock, almost 1. It's like 12:47 right now. I mean, we're 12 hours different, right? Oh, you're in Texas.
Yeah, 12 hours exactly.
We're 13 hours different. In Texas is
central, but it's 12:47 for me too.
So now the daylight savings time is off. Daylight savings time is over or something like that. Okay, cool. This was easy to do. Wasn't this easy to do? We can do this again.
Yeah, this is great.
I'd love your dad to hear one of my songs, because you know that for a guy like him who's a musician like him, that's where it all boils down to, you know, your song.
Yeah, maybe text me the song that maybe more than one that you want me to play for him, and I'll play it for him with good, speakers so he can hear it, and then we'll do our talk. Yeah, pretty much, man. Whatever you get attached to, that's what you funnel your consciousness into, pretty much, right?
Well, that was the whole reason behind living in the ashram, was that everybody was focusing on reading about the philosophy and the stories of Krishna's life, and worshiping the holy name, and living amongst devotees who have no other purpose than that. And everybody's trying to cultivate a love for God. Because the more you know about somebody who's lovable, the more you love them. And if you love them more than anything, and when you die, that'll be the last thing you think about. And if that's the last thing you think about, you don't have to get born again. And that's the goal of getting out. That's liberation. That's getting out. That's going to heaven.
Moksha.
Yeah. Moksha. That's getting out of the cycle of rebirth. You know. So I still have to follow that religion. But I mean, the psychedelic is what brought me to philosophy. Christianity is what brought me to God. And when I went to India is when I put the two together. And I even tell people, I say, that's the fact that they've made God so non-philosophical is one of the reasons one of the problems they have. That's why you have these nihilistic views coming in, making fun of Christianity for being non-philosophical. But there's plenty to be philosophical about if you just be philosophical. And then you have like Vedanta is all about, it's the underlying philosophy of the Vedas. The Vedanta, anta means end, the highest point. Like Veda anta means the highest knowledge. If you've got Vid know means to know. Veda means knowledge, and Vedanta means the highest knowledge. So if you've got a process, what does it ultimately come to? That's the Vedanta, the end of it, And the end of spiritual knowledge is coming to the feet of God, and getting in a relationship. But there are certain religions that don't believe in God as a person, and certain religions that do. And so that's how I separate religions. But I put Christianity and other religions like that, and Vaishnavism, and which is a major aspect of Hinduism, into the category of personalism, which I call theism, And then I've got the other people over here that believe in the void and the formless and all become nothing and you enter into zero. I put them into the category of the impersonalism, But neither of them are atheists, One of them believes in divinity as impersonal, one of them believes in divinity as personal. For me, the story can be summed up in the Ramayana story. At the end of the Ramayana story, Lord Rama told Hanuman, the monkey god who helped him win the war, that he was going to offer him Sayuja Mukti, which means the mukti of merging into the oneness of God and losing all your separate identity, And Hanuman said, "Dear Lord, if that means I lose my relationship with you from you of being your servant and you're my master, then I don't want any part of that." So that's that way I feel. If liberation means I lose my relationship with God, nope, I want my relationship with God. I just want it to get better and closer. But there's certain religions they don't accept God as having a personality. There's certain, and that includes Islam. Islam says, no, you can't have God paint a picture of God. We can't tell you what he looks like. You can't possibly even know, or you can't even talk about it. So when I get to the spiritual world, to heaven, then I can see him. No, you can't see him. Then it's also. Jesus, man. So you're talking impersonal here. You're not going to have time to see him. You got these 72 virgins. You're going to be banging them forever. Yeah, but I want to see God, man. No, you can't see God. That's kind of an impersonal religion. If there's no way to know God or see him as a person, then there's just no person. There's no personal relationship. For me, whether it's Jesus or whether it's Krishna or Ram or any of the different incarnations that happened, whichever one I'm most attached to, that's a personal preference. Like you're a vegetarian, I'm a vegetarian. There are certain foods you like better than others. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean we hate other foods. That doesn't mean there's only the thing we like is the only food in the entire universe. It's just a preference. Religion's a preference. You got God here, God there. Okay, they're all bona fide. For me to say my God is bona fide and your God is not, that's kind of silly. Especially considering that Hinduism has been around a lot longer than any other religion. But if people in the West act like India just didn't exist until all of a sudden there was this mythology came out of nowhere. And I'm like, yeah, man, get on a plane, fly to Delhi. You can drive for an hour. You can go right to the place where Krishna was born. It's a huge, giant temple. Wow. Thousands of pilgrims. So it's not like make believe. They kept all those places, and I lived in those places for years and years. Went every day, and that was during a period when there was no other Westerners. I mean, I used to be there whenever I'd go anywhere outside of the ashram, I never expected to see a Westerner. I was afraid to see a Westerner because they were the ones looking for me. I was running from Western law. And right. So seeing a Westerner would have been scary, but I just didn't see any. And now you go to Brindavan, there's just all over the place. It's just a big giant tourist trap, Brindavan, because it's been developed and it's really become really famous, And so you're not going to go there for any peace and quiet. I'll tell you, When I was there was no Westerners at all. It's pretty weird, pretty weird. People were telling me there's never been any Western here before. I said, really, God? They said, how is it for the whole population of the world? You're the only one. I said, God, I don't know, man, but I'm in the run. This is the place I couldn't think of a better place to hide because it was like so off the beaten track at the time. Now it's like, big hotels and stuff. It's always going to be commercialized. Anyway, I'll send you a couple songs to your dad here and a couple of links where he can look into my band, so you just see our background a little bit. I really like what your dad's doing politically, because before I didn't really see him as a political person, but I mean now he's taking the position of the anti-globalist. I'm like, yeah, man, count me in. Anti-globalism all the way, man. I don't want any part of this globalism bullshit, which is going to be just a big giant police state. Yeah, this is the perfect way you control people. You're not going to be able to spend a penny without permission.
And then maybe at some point, I'd love to get like a gemology session with you as well, because I feel like there's a great value in understanding what kind of minerals and things to maybe put on me or my ring or something like that. I feel like you might have some codes there.
Anyway, you did get the chart I did for you, right? Because I sent that through the mail, so I've got to send that book again. I really don't know how that got lost, but
We had to do
We'll send
FedEx,
it.
some
Yeah.
type of official pathway
Yeah.
or something.
No, it could have been registered. She just didn't think it was going to get lost, because usually you send something,
Right.
book post takes a little longer, but it doesn't disappear. But
Yeah.
so let me give me your address again in Texas where you are now, and I'll get that sent out this week.
Okay.
Send you a couple
All right,
books.
cool. I'll follow up. I'll send you a text on that. And yeah, brother, thank you so much for making this time. And let's follow up
Yeah,
and do
it's
another one
good.
soon.
You're looking great. You're looking handsomer than ever.
Thank you,
Your
brother.
dad should
You
be so
too.
proud of you. And I've listened to some of your music. I mean, it's pretty unusual. You're definitely doing something different, you know.
Thank you, bro.
Because a lot of bands are doing nothing different at all. You know?
That's true.
Your stuff is really spacey, you know. So
Thank you,
I don't know
man.
which one. I
Thank you.
can't remember which one I like, but you know, keep me posted with anything new. I want to hear what you're doing. I'll play it for Jiva.
I will. And I would love to work with Jiva as well. Sounds like he's a young, tapped in young man.
Yeah, the other day yesterday he had a band here called Trinity. You can look them up on YouTube. They've got billions of views. Trinity. They're like a big rock band here in Thailand. Also has its rock stars that are driving, really rich and super successful, and they go on tours in Japan and all over the place. And one of them is called Trinity, one of the newest ones, and I think it's three kids, and they're really, really good musicians. They were over here all day yesterday recording. Jiva, he's producing one of the records. So I'm like, man, I'm glad he's hanging out with famous people, because that's the way you get famous. Hang out with famous people, and that's how you get a break. If you've got something worthwhile, it's never going to get heard until it gets heard.
Bless you, bro.
We had to go. We had to go to England to get heard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, shout out to Guy Harriman for connecting us, and we'll follow up very soon and talk more.
Guy's girlfriend that he lived with, Dr. Rumpa. There was a lady,
I think so.
Thai lady named Dr. Rumpa, Rampa.
Yeah.
Who was taking care of him for years. And so she, after he passed away, she entered the monastery as a nun, and she's still there doing that. She's still there doing that. We're in touch with her. She's still a nun in the monastery. Yeah, I know. So that's the kind of guy he was, and the kind of girl he would have, and she was older, and she's these are pious people, Well, he was a pious guy, so he attracted pious people. And that's a lot of pious people here. A lot of pious. You got to come over here and hang out with us.
I look forward to it. Yeah, we'll talk about schedule very soon. I gotta hop off, but let's talk more soon.
Okay, bro.
All right, brother.
Namaste.
Blessings.
Namaste.
Namaskar. We'll talk soon.
Namaste. You take care.
Namaste. Peace.
Fully Reflective Podcast.